So if something says y varies directly as x, the first thing you're going to do is think, okay, direct means multiplication. And you're going to write down y is equal to some constant times x. We usually always use k as the constant. Then when you solve your problems, you'll be doing a few different things, okay? The first thing you're going to do, okay, when you have a direct variation, so this problem right here says the variables x and y vary directly. So when it says that they vary directly, you're going to say, okay, so that means y is equal to some constant k times x. And then the first thing that you're always going to do is we're always going to find k first. And then once we find k, we will use that k to write an equation. So this guy here says to write an equation, right? So that's, before you write the equation, you're going to have to find k. So let's do an example here. So this says x is 2 and y is 8. And we know x and y vary directly. So as soon as we know x and y vary directly, we write down this. And then we're going to first find k. So we're going to plug 2 in for x and 8 in for y. And we're going to find k. So we're going to take our equation right here. We're going to plug in 8 for y. Leave the k because we're going to find k. And 2 for x. And then what would I do to find k then? Just divide by 2. And so you will get k is equal to 4. So you've done step 1. You've found k. So that's the constant of variation. So it said find the constant of variation right here. That's what we did right here. Then you're going to write your equation because it says use that given value to write an equation. So that's step 2 that relates x and y. So we're going to take our equation, y is equal to kx, and we're just going to plug k back in. So y is equal to 4 times x. That is your equation that relates x and y directly. Your constant variation is 4, and this equation relates x and y directly because 4 is times x. So we've done part A, 1, and 2. Sometimes they will ask you for more than just the equation. Then they'll ask you to find y. So part B here asks us to find y. So then sometimes your third step is to find y. So we'll use our equation that we just wrote to find y for step 3. So it says find y when x is 5. So what are you going to do with that 5? This is our equation that relates x and y. What are you going to do with this 5 right here? Just plug it into the equation. Can you find y then if you plug it into the equation? Because it'll be 4 times 5, right? If you plug in 5 for x, so what will y be equal to? 20. And then we're done. So those are the 3 steps that you're going to use for every problem today. Find k, write an equation, and if they ask you to find y, find y. Find k, write an equation, and find y. Sometimes they don't ask you to find y, they just ask for the equation. So then you would get to stop in step 2. And we use this equation here because of the word directly. Directly means multiply. So constant k times x. All right, so for this one down here, you're using the same direct equation up here. Y is equal to kx. I want you to, 1, find k. Then 2, write your equation. Now with this x and y, so you have a new x and y here. X is 14 and y is 7. So use this equation. First find k, then write your equation. So go ahead and do part A on your own there. Use the new x and y right here. These are still varying directly, so you're still going to use this equation up here. And go ahead and find k and write an equation. So when you plug in, you're going to plug in x is 14 and y is 7. So you'll have 7 is equal to k times 14. All right, you're taking this equation, you're plugging in x is 14, y is 7, and you're finding k. So then to find k, we'll divide by 14. And so you should get k is equal to 1/2 or 0.5. If you want to write it as a decimal, that's fine. So then your equation should be y is equal to 1/2 x. Because you're just taking your equation, you figured out what k is, so this is an equation that relates y and x directly because it's some number times x, right? Some constant times x. This means y and x varies directly. Your constant of variation here is 1/2. This equation y and x also vary directly, but our constant of variation was 4. Any questions about how we got k or the equation?
X is 14, right?
Yes. For this one, for part A, right here?
Oh, for part 2.
For this part? No.
Oh, I did see that. Fine.
Yep, it says find y when x is 10, right? So now for part B, you're going to find y when x is 10. So you're going to take your equation that you just found, and you're going to plug in x equals 10. And 1/2 times 10 is 5. So y is equal to 5. Any questions about part B? So I said there are three types of variations. We just did direct. If it says y and x are inversely, vary inversely, that means division. Okay, so if you see the word inversely, you want to write down this equation. Y is equal to k divided by x instead of times x. If y varies inversely with x, that means you're going to be dividing by x. Okay? You're still going to follow the same 3 steps. You're going to, 1, find the constant of variation, find k. Then you're going to write an equation, and then you're going to find y if they ask you for it. So this problem, it says that x and y vary inversely. So now you're going to use the equation y is equal to k divided by x. So inversely means divide. Okay? Direct means multiply. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find k. So we're going to plug in x equals 2 and y equals 5 into this equation, because it's inversely related. So now we're using this equation. So plug in 5 for y. Leave your k, because we're going to find k, and put in 2 for x. Now how do I find k? What do? Multiply by 2, right? Because we're dividing by 2. So to get rid of that, we're going to multiply both sides by 2. And we'll get k is equal to 10. So then step 2 is to write your equation. So once you find k is equal to 10, you'll fill in y, then put k in for 10, and leave the x. So this is an equation that relates y and x inversely, because 10 is divided by x. You have a constant variation, here's 10, and y and x are related inversely because we have a constant divided by x. So then lastly, you're going to find y, because they say find y when x is 5. So then plug in x equals 5. Ten divided by 5 is 2, so y is equal to 2. So I would like you to do the same 3 steps for number 4 on your own. This is still inversely, so you get to still use this equation in blue, but go ahead and do the same 3 steps. Find k, write your equation, and then find y for these new x and y values. So go ahead and do number 4 on your own. So we're using this equation right here because y varies inversely with x. So we're going to plug in y equals 7. We're going to find k, so we'll leave k, and we'll plug in x equals 3. Here we'll multiply both sides by 3 to find k. So you'll get k is equal to 21. So check to make sure you had k equal to 21. Then you'll write your equation with k in it. So 21 divided by x, y equals 21 divided by x. This is an equation that relates y and x inversely, and the constant of variation is 21. Then we can find y when x is 2. So we'll plug in 2 for x. You can either leave that as that fraction, or you can write it as a decimal. It's 10.5. So make sure you had all 3 things. K, your equation, and then what y is when you plug in x equals 2. Any questions about number 4? Okay, flip over to the next page. Sometimes you'll see them combined, like they might say y varies directly with x and inversely with z, and so then you'll have 2 things in there. Sometimes you'll see things like y varies directly as maybe the second power of x or the square of x, and then in that case you'll be putting x squared, or you can do the third power of x, and then it will be x to the third. So sometimes you'll combine things with a direct variation and an inverse variation. So for the example, this one says, find the constant and equation. So that's step 1 and 2. In which y varies directly, so we're thinking multiply, but it says directly with the square of x. Not with x, with the square of x. Okay? If that just said x, it would be y equal to k times x. But this says y varies directly, so we're going to multiply by k, but it varies directly with the square of x. So we'll have x squared being multiplied by k, not just x. And they ask us to find the constant, find the equation, and then find y. So we'll do the same 3 steps that we usually do. We're going to find k. So we're going to plug in y equals 8 and x equals 2. Into this equation right here, because y varies directly with the square of x. So you're multiplying by x squared instead of just x. When we do this, the first thing we need to do before we divide is what do we need to do first? Square the 2 2 squared is 4, so you have 8 is equal to k times 4. Then you can divide by 4. And so you'll get k is equal to 2. Then you'll write your equation. So we'll have y is equal to 2x squared. So this is an equation that varies, y varies directly with x squared, or the square of x, and k is 2, our constant of variation. Then you can use that equation to find y when x is 5. So plug in 5 for x. Should I do 2 times 5 first or 5 squared first? What comes first? I need to do the square first, right? Exponents first, then PEMDAS. So square 5 first, and you'll get 2 times 25, which is 50. So y is equal to 50. Okay, the last type of variation we have is a joint variation, and this is basically just extra, like 2 things that are being directly related. So when y varies jointly as x and z, that means multiplication with both x and z. So you're gonna have some constant times x and z. So this problem right here says find an equation of variation where y varies jointly as x and z. So when we say that, it means y is going to be multiplied, k is going to be multiplied by both x and z. That's what jointly means. Because y varies jointly as x and z. So when you're jointly, it means it's multiplied by both of those things. We'll still use the same 3 steps. So first we'll find k. It says y is 42 and x is 2 and z is 3. So we'll plug all of those in, and we'll have 42 is equal to k. We're trying to find k, so leave k. 2 times 3. So we'll multiply 2 times 3, and we'll have 42 is equal to k times 6. And then we'll divide both sides by 6. And we'll get k is equal to 7. So here our constant of variation is 7. So our equation will be y is equal to 7xz. And notice how this one only asks for an equation. It says find an equation. It doesn't say find y, so we don't have a step 3. It's just finding the equation. So this is an equation that varies, y varies jointly with x and z. Our constant of variation is 7. All right, I would like you to look at this table, and I've given you a bunch of equations. And I want you to look at each equation and decide, is this direct, is this inverse, or is this joint? For direct, we're thinking multiplication. Inverse is division. Joint is double multiplication, so things multiply together. And then you're going to write down what the constant of variation is. So go ahead and fill out that table. All right, let's go over this table. So in this table, the first one, this is a direct variation, because there's a little -1 in front of this. So this is -1 times x. So because it's being multiplied, it's direct, and your constant of variation is -1. The constant that's being multiplied by x is -1. This one is inverse because it's division, and your constant of variation is 7 because your k is being divided by x. This is joint because there's 2 things being multiplied by 2. And your constant of variation is 2, because your constant is the number that's being multiplied by those things. This one is direct because it's multiplication. Constant variation is 3. This one is inverse because it's division. And your constant of variation is negative 23 because there's a negative in the front. So you can put that negative up with the 23. This is the same thing as the first one. So ignore that. And then this one is also joint because there's x and z being multiplied together. Your constant variation is 3. Any questions about any of those? All right, you're going to try a couple problems on your own now. So 7 says y varies inversely as x. So right away, because this says y varies inversely as x, we know this means y is equal to k divided by x. So we'll take that equation, and first we'll find k. So we'll plug in 16 for y, leave k, plug in 0.3 for x, multiply both sides by 0.3, and you get k is equal to 4.8. So your equation that you should have is y is equal to 4.8 divided by x. Make sure you have this equation down here. If you don't have this written down, then you've missed part of the question because it said find an equation of variation. Okay? You have to write that part down. That's this part right here, an equation of variation. And then 3 will find y. So then we plug in 12 for x. 4.8 divided by 12, y is equal to 0.4. So you should have 3 things here, k, the equation, and y equals 0.4. Make sure you have all 3 of those things. K, the equation, and y equals 0.4. Any questions about number 7? All right, number 8 says y varies directly as x. So this tells us y is equal to k times x. So we'll use that to find k. We'll plug in y equals 12. X is equal to 2. Divide both sides by 2, and you get k is equal to 6. So our equation should be y is equal to 6 times x. So make sure you have k equals 6. And make sure you have this equation written down. That's the first 2 parts of the answer. It asks us to find both of those things. Then it asks us to find y when x is 3. So then we'll find y when x is 3. So plug in 3 for x, and you get y is equal to 18. So 3 things should be in your answer here. K is equal to 6, y is equal to 6x, and y is equal to 18. All right, I would like you to start the next one on your own. Read the question and write down your equation you need to use for number 9. So start number 9. So this one you have to be careful. You have to read carefully. This says y varies directly, but directly as what? The square of x. Y varies directly as the square of x. So our equation is y is equal to kx squared. Not just y equals kx, because it's directly as the square of x. So go ahead and finish this one. All right, so we'll find k first. Plugging in 12 for y. And x is 2, so we'll have 2 squared. So you're going to have to 2 squared first, and you'll have k times 4. then divide both sides by 4, and you get k is equal to 3. So make sure you had k equals 3. Then your equation will be y is equal to 3x squared. That should be the second part of your answer. And then your third part of your answer, when you find y when x is 3. Three squared is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. So y should be equal to 27. All right, let's look at number 13. For number 13, this is a combination, so you have to do all of it together. It says y varies jointly as x and z. So if you start with that, you're going to get y is equal to kxz. Okay? Y varies jointly as x and z. That's this. We're used to that. And inversely with the square of w. You have to do it all in one time. And inversely as the square of w. So what does it mean to be inversely? What does inverse mean? Multiply or divide? Divide. So you have to divide by the square of w. So directly with k, x, and z, and inversely as the square of w. And then 14 says y varies directly as the square root of x. Okay, so y varies directly as the square root of x. So we know that means k times the square root of x. Directly is multiply. And inversely as w. So divided by w. So directly means multiply. Inversely means divide. So you have to do all of it together. Okay, so then these are the answers you should end up with for the last two.